The golden light of dusk filtered through the tall grass as a scarred gray tabby dragged herself through the overgrown field. Her ribs protruded beneath patchy fur, her left ear notched from some long-ago battle. No collar, no name, just another discarded creature in America's heartland. She paused to lick a bleeding paw, unaware that tonight, this very hour, her lonely existence would change forever. Somewhere beyond the rusted tractor, a sound whispered through the autumn leaves. Not the wind, not the crickets. Something alive, something helpless. The old cat lifted her head, her green eyes reflecting the last light of day. Who abandoned this weary soul? That story was lost to time. But her next chapter, that was about to break every rule nature ever wrote. The sound came again, a high, trembling whimper that cut through the cat's instinct to keep walking. Her ears swiveled toward the crumbling barn. There, beneath a mound of rotting leaves, movement. Tiny paws flailed helplessly. 5 infant raccoons, their eyes still milky blue, squirmed in the dirt. No mother in sight, just the fading warmth of where she'd once lain. The tabby's muscles tensed. Every survival instinct said leave them. Raccoons were wild. Raccoons were trouble. But the smallest kit, its fur still damp from birth, turned its face upward and sneezed. In that instant, the stray cat's life divided into before and after. Her paw hovered over the shivering pile. To touch them would defy nature. To leave them would defy something deeper.
Moonlight revealed the truth in stark detail. These were no kittens. Masked faces, ringed tails, tiny hands that grasped at her fur with surprising strength. The tabby's whiskers twitched as she counted them. 5 mouths she couldn't feed, 5 lives she had no business saving. The largest kit nuzzled against her empty belly, instinctively seeking milk that wouldn't come. A normal cat would have walked away. A smart cat certainly would. But as the babies curled into her warmth, something ancient stirred in the stray's chest. She began to lick them, her rough tongue moving in slow, deliberate strokes. The raccoons responded with soft chitters, their tiny bodies relaxing into her care. In the shadow of that abandoned barn, an unspoken pact was made. The forest could call it unnatural. She'd call it love. Dawn brought cruel reality. The tabby's stomach growled as she watched the kit squirm. No milk, no food, just 5 gaping mouths and her own weakening body. She eyed the distant farmhouse. She'd stolen scraps from their garbage before. But now? Now she'd need 5 times as much. The old tomcat who patrolled the creek would have said, "Let nature take its course." The practical part of her brain agreed. Then the smallest raccoon, the one with the white-tipped tail, climbed onto her back and burrowed into her fur. The tabby sighed a sigh as old as motherhood itself. With careful movements, she gathered the kits into the driest corner of the barn. Then she turned toward the farmhouse, her gait stiff with determination. She'd beg. She'd steal. She'd do whatever it took, even if it killed her.
The tabby's tongue moved rhythmically across the raccoon's tiny body, smoothing down fur still damp from birth. Her rough tongue caught on burrs, gently working them free. The kit, the boldest one with unusually dark markings, leaned into the grooming, its tiny paws kneading the air in contentment. Strange how natural it felt. The other kits soon clamored for attention, pushing against each other to reach their unlikely caretaker. The tabby worked methodically, cleaning ears, wiping faces, even between tiny toes. Her purr rumbled unexpectedly, vibrating through the pile of furry bodies. The raccoons responded with chirps and chitters, their little hands patting her face. In that moment, names didn't matter. Species didn't matter. There was only this. one creature caring for another. The world outside the barn ceased to exist as the tabby licked and nuzzled, her movements slow with exhausted tenderness. This was her family now. The tabby's ears shot up at the crunch of boots on dry leaves. Through the gaps in the barn wall she saw him, a hulking figure in a black coat, dragging something metal across the dirt. The raccoon kits trembled against her belly as the sharp snap of a trap being set echoed through the trees. The man whistled as he worked, tossing chunks of raw meat into a wire cage. The tabby's muscles coiled tight. She knew these contraptions, knew the shrieks animals made when the metal jaws clamped down. One wrong move, one curious kit wandering too far, and everything would be over. She pulled the babies closer with her tail, her green eyes never leaving the shadow moving beyond the trees. The man straightened, wiped his hands on his jeans, and glanced right at their hiding place. Did he know?
Yellow eyes flashed in the moonlight. The tabby froze as a massive raccoon emerged from the brush, thick-furred, with a jagged scar across her muzzle. The real mother. The wild raccoon's gaze locked onto the kits curled against the tabby's side, then lifted to meet the cat's eyes. A low growl rumbled in her throat. The tabby pressed flat to the ground, fur on end, ready to fight for these babies that weren't hers. But the wild raccoon didn't attack. She just stared. Then, with a flick of her ringed tail, she turned and vanished into the night. The tabby exhaled. This wasn't over. Somewhere out there, the kit's true mother was waiting, watching, judging. And the tabby knew, one day, that raccoon would be back to reclaim what was hers. The tabby, let's call her Nayla now, arched over the kits as they nuzzled her empty belly, their tiny paws kneaded, searching for milk that would never come. She closed her eyes against the guilt. It was a cruel trick, letting them believe she could nourish them. But what choice did she have? Outside, the black-coated man's traps still lurked in the grass. The kits whimpered, their bellies hollow. Nayla did the only thing she could. She licked them harder, faster, trying to distract them with affection. The boldest kit, the one with dark markings, suddenly latched onto her fur and suckled anyway. Nayla flinched, but didn't pull away. If pretending could keep them quiet, keep them safe from the man and his traps, she'd play the part. Even as her own body weakened, even as the lie ate at her. 3 days without food. Nyla's legs wobbled as she dragged a stolen chicken bone into the barn. The kits pounced, gnawing greedily. She collapsed beside them, her vision spotting. She'd torn open her paw, digging through the farmhouse trash, but it was worth it to see them eat. The smallest kit, the white-tipped one, paused and nudged the bone toward her. Nyla pushed it back. Her stomach screamed, but her heart screamed louder. Somewhere in the trees, unseen, the real mother raccoon watched, saw how this bony stray gave everything, how she was dying for babies that weren't even her kind. The kits finished eating and curled into Nyla's fur. Her purr was weak now, her breathing shallow. But she kept licking them, kept pretending. If this was the end, she'd go out loving them. The boots came again, right on time. Nyla counted his steps, 12 to the traps, 20 to the barn. But tonight, something was different. The jingle of keys, the crackle of a radio, and the man's voice, rough and eager. Got a buyer for live ones, big money. Nyla's blood turned to ice. This wasn't just pest control. This was profit. The kit stirred against her as headlights swept the barn walls. The man laughed, low and ugly. He knew they were here, and he wasn't leaving without them. Nyla gathered the kits close, her mind racing. The wild mother raccoon was out there somewhere. The traps were set. The man was coming. And 5 innocent lives hung in the balance.
The largest kit, Junkar, was the first to react. As the black-coated man's shadow fell across the barn entrance, the young raccoon launched himself forward with a fierce chitter, his tiny fangs bared. The man laughed, swatting at him like a fly, but Junkar dodged, sinking his teeth into the man's boot. Nyla's heart pounded. This foolish, brave baby was buying them time. She shoved the other kits behind her, hissing as the man cursed and kicked. Junkar went flying, hitting the wall with a thud. For one terrible second, he didn't move. Then, miraculously, he scrambled up, shaking himself off. The man lunged, but Junkar was already darting between his legs, leading him away from the barn, away from the others. Nyla trembled. She wanted to run after him, but the remaining kits clung to her fur, terrified. Choices. There were never any good ones. A streak of fur exploded from the trees. The scarred mother raccoon, moving faster than Nyla thought possible. She didn't go for the man. She went straight for Junkar, scooping him up by the scruff. For a heartbeat, the wild raccoon's eyes met Nyla's. No growl this time, no threat, just understanding. Then she vanished into the underbrush with Junkar dangling from her jaws. The man shouted, turning to give chase. Nyla didn't wait. She herded the remaining kits deeper into the barn, her mind racing. The real mother had saved Junkar, but would she come back for the others? Or had she only wanted her own blood? The answer came sooner than expected, a rustling at the back of the barn. The wild raccoon was back, alone, and this time she wasn't leaving without a fight.
The first gunshot split the air. Nyla barely registered the sting in her ear, a graze too close. The kit screamed, scattering. The wild mother raccoon snarled, positioning herself between them and the man. Another shot rang out. Dirt sprayed near Nyla's paws. No time to think. She grabbed the nearest kit, the white-tipped one, by the scruff and bolted. The others followed in a panicked blur, their tiny legs pumping. Behind them, the wild raccoon hissed and spat, drawing the man's fire. Nyla didn't look back. She couldn't. The woods loomed ahead, dark and thick. If they could just reach the creek, just make it to the old hollow log. A third shot, a yelp. Nyla's stomach dropped, but she kept running, because sometimes the only way to honor a sacrifice was to survive it. Dawn found them exhausted in the hollow log, Nyla and the 4 remaining kits. The wild mother raccoon was gone, maybe dead, maybe just gone. The white-tipped kit nuzzled Nyla's bleeding ear, whining softly. The others huddled close, their little bodies trembling. Nyla licked them mechanically, her mind elsewhere. That raccoon, their real mother, had saved them, had given her life for them? Nyla would never know. But as the sun rose, painting the creek gold, she made a silent promise to the empty trees. She would finish what that brave raccoon started. She would keep them safe, even if it cost her everything. The kits curled into her, their breathing slowing. For now, they were alive. For now, that was enough.
The days blurred. Nyla taught the kits what she could, how to find the safest garbage bins, which berries wouldn't kill them, where the black-coated man's traps were hidden. They learned fast, too fast. The bold one, the dark-furred kit, was already venturing farther each day. The white-tipped one still stuck close, always touching Nyla, always checking she was there. At night, when the kit slept, Nyla would stare at the stars and wonder about Junkar. Was he alive? Did he remember her? Sometimes she thought she saw a shadow at the edge of the trees, a large raccoon with a scarred muzzle, watching, but it was never there when she looked twice. Maybe ghosts didn't linger for strays. Maybe they knew better. He came back on a rainy afternoon, bigger, stronger, but still unmistakably Jankar. The kits mobbed him immediately, squealing and nipping. Nayla hung back, her tail flicking. Jankar approached her slowly, his nose twitching. Then, with a soft chitter, he pressed his forehead to hers. Just once. Just enough. When the rain stopped, he left again, his ringed tail held high. The kits cried for hours. Nayla didn't. She knew this was how it was supposed to be. Raccoons grew up. Cats got left behind. That night, as she groomed the remaining 3, she tried not to think about how quiet the hollow log was getting.
One by one, they left. The dark-furred kit was next, vanishing into the autumn woods without a backward glance. Then the 2 smaller ones, together. Only the white-tipped kit remained, smaller than the others, slower. She stayed through winter, curled against Nyla's thinning body as the snow piled up outside. But spring came, as it always did, and one morning Nyla woke to an empty log. No nuzzle, no goodbye, just silence. That night, a sound unlike any other ripped from Nyla's chest, a howl so raw it sent birds bursting from the trees. Somewhere, maybe, the kits heard it. Somewhere, maybe, they remembered, but no one came. Years passed. Nyla's fur went gray, her step slower. She still patrolled the creek, still avoided the black-coated man's traps. And every June, without fail, she'd find them. A small pile of wildflowers at the base of the old oak. Always the same kinds, always arranged just so. She never saw who left them, but sometimes, drifting off in the sun, she'd dream of small hands placing petals with infinite care.
The white-tipped kit came back on a day Nyla could barely lift her head. She wasn't a kit anymore, a full-grown raccoon, her fur sleek, her movements sure. And she wasn't alone. 3 tiny faces peered from behind her legs, their masks barely formed. Jauntney, because that's who she was now, nudged them forward. They climbed over Nyla with no fear, their little paws patting her face, her ears. Jauntney watched, her dark eyes soft. Then she did something extraordinary. She groomed Nyla, her rough tongue moving in slow, familiar circles, just like Nyla had done for her so long ago. The message was clear. Rest now. I'll take care of them. Nyla closed her eyes as the kits tumbled around her, their squeaks filling the hollow log. She could feel Chandni's warmth against her back, steady and sure. The pain in her joints didn't matter. The years didn't matter. Somewhere beyond the trees, Jankar and the others were living their wild lives. Somewhere, the black-coated man was still setting his traps. But here, now, there was only this, a scrappy old cat surrounded by raccoons who didn't know they weren't hers. And maybe, in the end, that was the real magic. Not that she'd saved them, but that they'd saved her right back.
The first frost came early that year. Nayla's breathing grew labored. Her once agile body now little more than bones draped in patchy fur. Yet when Chandni's kits shivered against the cold, the old cat still found the strength to pull them close. Her purr, a sound that had once rumbled like thunder, now whispered through the hollow log like a fading echo. The smallest kit, a mirror image of Chandni with that same white-tipped tail, burrowed beneath Nayla's chin. The others pressed against her flanks, their tiny hands kneading her thinning fur. Chandni watched from the entrance, her dark eyes glistening. She knew what was coming, knew this might be their last night together. But as the wind howled outside, Nayla did what she'd always done. She gave what she had left. The old farmer found them at dawn, a gray-striped cat curled around 3 sleeping raccoons, her chest still as stone.
He knelt in the frost, calloused fingers brushing Nayla's matted fur. "Lord above," he murmured. The local vet would later stare at X-rays in disbelief. Arthritis in every joint, a healed fracture from some ancient injury, lungs scarred from pneumonia. "This cat," the vet would say, shaking his head, "shouldn't have lived to see last spring." But the farmer just nodded toward the hollow log, where Chandni still kept vigil. "Guess she had her reasons," he'd reply. Neither man noticed the wildflowers already wilting at the base of the old oak, or the large raccoon with a scarred muzzle watching from the tree line. The abandoned barn still stands, its rotting wood home to generations of raccoons. Every summer solstice they come, some with gray fur, some with dark masks, a few with that distinctive white tail tip. They don't forage, don't fight, just sit together in the golden light as the sun sets. Locals whisper about it at the diner. The postman swears he's seen a massive raccoon with a scarred face leading them. But Old Man Higgins at the feed store just smiles into his coffee. He remembers a skinny tabby who used to steal his chicken scraps, remembers how she'd always leave some behind, as if saving it for someone. Now he keeps a bag of cat treats on his counter, just in case. Some bonds, it seems, outlast even death. The kits learned quickly which berries were sweetest, where the juiciest earthworms hid, how to spot the glint of metal traps before they snapped shut. But Chandni taught them something more important. On quiet afternoons, she'd lead them to the hollow log, now lined with fresh moss. There, she'd nudge them toward a particular spot, a depression in the earth where Nayla had once slept. The kits would sniff curiously, their tiny noses twitching at the lingering scent of cat. Chandni would groom them then, her tongue moving in slow, deliberate strokes, just like she'd been groomed, just like they'd all been taught. The lesson was simple. This is where we came from. This is who loved us first. Deep in the woods, where the creek bends sharply east, there's a fallen oak with roots like gnarled fingers. Inside its hollow center, generations of raccoons have weathered winter's worst. But look closer. There, woven among the leaves and moss, you'll find tufts of gray cat fur. Not much, just enough. The locals say if you pass by on the coldest nights, you might hear it, a sound like distant purring mingled with raccoon chitters. Nonsense, of course. Tricks of the wind. Still, Old Man Higgins leaves a can of tuna by that oak every December, just in case. Some stories don't need endings, just remembering. It happened the winter after Nylahide. The black-coated man returned with his traps and guns. But this time the woods themselves seemed to resist. Twigs snapped underfoot, no matter how carefully he stepped. Owls screeched warnings from every tree. And once, when he reached for a trap, a branch cracked overhead, sending a shower of snow down his collar. By midnight, he was running for his truck, swearing at shadows. He never came back. Some say it was coincidence. Others whisper about a particular gray-striped ghost watching from the underbrush. But Chandni knew the truth. The forest protects its own. Always had, always would. No one marked Nyla's resting place. No stone, no cross. Just a mound of autumn leaves that never quite blew away. Yet somehow, the spot remains visible. A perfect circle where the grass grows greener, the wildflowers brighter. The farmer swears he's seen raccoons there at dawn, their little hands patting the earth as if checking for a heartbeat. Once, he claims, he even saw a massive tomcat sitting vigil at the edge of the clearing. But when he blinked, it was gone. Maybe ghosts don't linger for long. Maybe they just visit when they're needed most. The wildlife photographer didn't understand what she'd captured until developing the film.
a perfect shot of Chandni grooming her kits outside the hollow log. But it was the background detail that made her gasp. There, barely visible in the dappled sunlight, what looked like the faint outline of a gray cat curled around them. A trick of the light, surely. Yet when she showed the photo at the county fair, Old Man Higgins bought it on the spot. He hung it behind his feed store counter, right next to the cat treats. Some things, he'd tell anyone who asked, aren't meant to be explained, just honored.
Years later, kids playing near the abandoned barn found it, a tarnished locket buried in the dirt. Inside, a faded photo of a smiling woman holding a gray kitten. The local paper ran the story, and within days an elderly woman arrived claiming it was hers. She'd lost it decades ago, she said, when her husband trapped raccoons on their failing farm. He always blamed them for everything, she whispered, stroking the locket. That kitten had been her only comfort in a bad marriage, the last thing she'd loved before leaving. Now she tends Naela's grave every spring. Some deaths, it seems, take lifetimes to repay. They never put up a marker, never needed to. Because if you ask anyone in town about the raccoons at the old Higgins place, they'll smile and tell you the same story, about a cat who mothered what nature said she shouldn't, about babies who never knew they were orphans, about flowers that still appear like clockwork every June. And if you listen closely to the wind through the hollow log, you might just hear it, the ghost of a purr, the echo of chitters, the unmistakable sound of a love that refused to end. Not all angels have wings. Some have whiskers. Some have rings around their tails. And some just have hearts big enough to change the world. The old-timers at the feed store still argue about it over coffee. That cat had more grit than old Yeller and Lassie combined, one will say, slapping the counter. Another will chuckle, yeah, but Yeller never raised a passel of raccoons, now did he? They'll debate it for hours, how a skinny stray could rewrite the rules of nature itself. The young folks roll their eyes, of course. But every now and then, someone spots Old Man Higgins leaving an extra scoop of kibble by the hollow log, just in case. Some legends don't fade. They just get retold with more wonder each passing year. School teachers read the classic tale to wide-eyed children, but the kids already know a better story. They've seen Chauntney's descendants at the creek, raccoons who don't flee from humans, who sometimes even approach with curious chitters. The boldest ones still have that white-tipped tail, still pause to sniff at gray fur caught on bark. The children leave offerings at the hollow log, shiny pennies, bits of sandwich, once even a carefully written thank-you note wrapped in plastic. Their parents smile indulgently. But at night, when the wind carries strange purring sounds from the woods, those same parents pull their kids a little closer. Some lessons aren't in books. They're written in paw prints and wildflowers.
Hollywood would have botched it anyway. No script could capture the way moonlight silvered Naela's fur as she stood guard over those raccoon kits. No actor can replicate Chauntney's exact chitter when she first recognized her adopted mother's scent years later. The real magic happened in the quiet moments Hollywood always edits out. The 1,000 tiny licks, the shared warmth on freezing nights, the way a dying cat's purr could still calm grown raccoons. Maybe some stories resist cameras. Maybe they're meant to live where they began, in whispers between neighbors, in children's imaginations, in the way the whole damn town still watches for gray-striped shadows at dusk. Funny thing, Naela never traveled more than 3 miles her whole life. Didn't need to. Her adventure wasn't about distance, but depth. How far can a heart stretch? Turns out, further than anyone imagined. The kits traveled, of course. Jankar was spotted clear over in Millerville. One of Chandni's babies made it all the way to the state park. But they all returned, season after season, to that same hollow log. Like salmon swimming upstream, like homing pigeons,
like creatures who understood that home isn't a place, it's who waits for you there. Even when who is just a memory, even when waits means wildflowers on a grave.
At first, Nayla was just another neighborhood mystery, the ghost cat no one could get close to. Then she became a cautionary tale. Don't touch wild animals. Then a legend. Now she's the secret heart of the town, their silent, furry Atticus. The kids leave her gifts. The old folks tell her story. Even the skeptical sheriff slows his patrol car near the hollow log, just in case. Funny how the outcasts become the glue that holds everything together. The mockingbirds still sing at the old oak, but if you listen carefully, there's another melody underneath, softer, rarer, sung in purrs and chitters. A song about seeing people, creatures, for who they truly are. The vet found them during Nayla's final examination. Not scars, exactly. More like impressions. Worn patches where tiny raccoon hands had kneaded her fur for years. The skin beneath was permanently textured, like braille only love could read. "Never seen anything like it," the vet murmured. Old man Higgins just nodded. He remembered watching Nayla with those kits, how they'd clamber over her like a living blanket, how she'd endure their needle-sharp claws without complaint. Some marks don't fade when the touching stops. Some are meant to stay, like fingerprints on clay, like raccoon paws on a cat's soul. Chandni's first litter didn't know what to make of the hollow log's lingering cat scent, but Chandni showed them, nudging them to sniff Nyla's old sleeping spot, grooming them with the same slow licks she'd learned as a kit. An education in love. Now those babies have babies of their own, and the lessons continue. The white-tipped tail has become something of a family trait, a visible reminder of invisible bonds. Sometimes at dusk, when the light slants just right, you can see the whole raccoon clan gathered at the log's entrance. Not foraging, not playing, just remembering. Passing down the story in the only way animals can, through touch, through care, through stubborn, beautiful repetition. That final season, Nyla moved slower, slept more. But when Chandni's kits tumbled into the hollow log each morning, the old cat would rally, licking faces, tolerating their pounces, even managing the ghost of a purr. The farmer swears he saw her sunning herself one July afternoon with 3 raccoons draped over her like a living quilt. Looked peaceful, he'd say later, voice rough. The truth is, Nyla's body was failing, but her warmth, that never dimmed. Not when the kits snuggled close, not when Chandni groomed her thinning fur, not even at the very end, when her last breath left her body still curled around them. Some fires don't go out, they just change form. Musicologists would scoff, of course. Raccoons don't sing, cats don't compose. But spend a night near the hollow log when the moon is full and you'll hear it. A strange, soft chorus of chitters and purrs. The old folks say it's Nyla's lullabies, passed down through generations. Scientists would call it wishful thinking. The raccoons, they don't care what anyone calls it. They just know the sounds that soothe their kits best. The particular rhythm that makes little one's eyes droop. The melody woven through with love so deep, even time can't erode it. Some songs don't need sheet music. They're written directly on the heart. The biology textbooks never saw it coming. A feline raising procyonids. The experts still debate whether it was true adoption or just instinct gone awry. But walk into any kindergarten class in town, and the children will set you straight. They'll show you crayon drawings of a gray cat surrounded by raccoons. They'll recite the story with wide-eyed certainty. And if you're very lucky, one might take your hand and lead you to the hollow log at dusk, where the fireflies dance, where the wind carries strange, sweet sounds, where the wildflowers grow in perfect circles, where love rewrote the rules, then faded into legend, but never really left, not completely.
Not yet.
There were no formal documents, no legal proceedings, just a tired stray cat and 5 orphaned raccoons who needed her. Nature never prepared them for this. The textbooks claimed it couldn't happen. But every evening when Nyla gathered those kits close, licking their masked faces clean, the forest held its breath. The trees whispered about it. The creek carried the story downstream. Some bonds don't need paperwork. Some families are written in licks and nuzzles and shared body heat against the cold. The blackberries still grow thickest around that hollow log, as if the earth itself approved. Nyla left no material possessions, just a hollow log full of memories and generations of raccoons who carried her lessons in their bones. The way Chantney still grooms her kits with slow, deliberate strokes. The way Joncar's descendants always share food. The way every white-tip-tail raccoon pauses at the old barn, sniffing the air for a ghostly feline scent. Her inheritance wasn't land or money, but something far more enduring. A legacy of love so strong it outlived her heartbeat. The farmer still shakes his head when he sees raccoons sunning themselves where Nyla once napped. "Ain't natural," he mutters, then smiles.
Real estate means nothing to raccoons. They won't fight over property lines or fence disputes. What Chandni inherited from Nyla couldn't be surveyed or taxed. The exact angle of a grooming lick that comforts frightened kits. The particular purr that means safety. The way to lead little ones to food without crossing the black-coated man's traps. These days, when the raccoons raid garbage cans, they do it neatly, almost politely, as if remembering a cat's disdain for mess. The neighbors pretend to complain, but everyone notices. The trash is always scattered less where the white-tipped raccoons forage. Some lessons stick. The newspaper never ran a death notice for Nyla, but if they had, it wouldn't have mentioned her matted fur or missing teeth. It would have told about the way 3 generations of raccoons still turn their heads at the sound of a cat's meow, about the hollow log that stays mysteriously clear of spiders and snakes, about how the toughest old farmers still get quiet when someone mentions that stray who raised the coons. The best obituaries aren't printed. They're lived, in traditions passed down, in kindnesses repaid, in wildflowers that bloom exactly where they're needed most.
No human spoke at Nyla's funeral. No hymns were sung. But as moonlight silvered her resting place that first night, the forest came alive. Owls perched closer than usual. A fox left a freshly caught mouse at the grave's edge. Deer stepped delicately around the wildflowers. And raccoons, so many raccoons, sat in perfect silence, their little hands folded as if in prayer. The largest one, a scarred veteran with a familiar jagged muzzle, placed one paw on the turned earth. Then they all melted back into the trees, leaving only paw prints in the dew. Some goodbyes don't need words. Some are written in the language of the wild. Because every spring, new kits are born with that telltale white-tipped tail. Because Old Man Higgins still tells the story to anyone who listen. Because somewhere out there, a new stray cat is watching a litter of something impossible, her instincts warring with her heart. The black-coated man's traps are rusting in some junkyard now, but other dangers remain. Other stories are beginning. What Nyla started didn't end with her last breath. It just changed form, like water becoming mist, becoming rain. The creek still murmurs her name. The raccoons still pause when gray shadows flicker at dusk. And the hollow log? It's never really empty. GPS coordinates won't help you find it. You have to walk slowly, following the creek until the sound of traffic fades. Past the 3rd lightning-struck oak, left at the granite boulder shaped like a sleeping cat. There, where the wild strawberries grow in suspiciously neat circles, you'll find it. The hollow log looks ordinary enough, but kneel down, peer inside. See those tufts of gray fur still woven into the moss?
Notice how the raccoon tracks lead here in straight lines, as if pulled by memory. The locals won't mark it on your map, but if you sit quietly at dusk, you might understand why this place feels different, why the air hums, why your eyes inexplicably sting. Look for the raccoons who don't quite act like raccoons, the ones who purr when stroked, though you shouldn't touch, the kits who play fight with careful, sheathed paws, the adults who share food without squabbling. Most telling? Watch for the ones who pause at barns, sniffing the air with peculiar intensity. The old farmers know, when a raccoon stands on its hind legs near that abandoned shed, ears cocked as if listening for something, it's not foraging, it's remembering. And if you're very quiet, you might hear it too, the ghost of a purr on the wind, the echo of a love that refused to die.
The trees still whisper about it, how a scrawny tabby rewrote the rules of nature. The creek carries the story in its bubbles. Even the crows, those cynical observers, caw about it with unusual reverence. Humans forget. We move away, we die. But the forest keeps perfect records. In the way certain vines avoid the hollow log, in how the fireflies always dance brightest near Nayla's grave, in the inexplicable fact that no predator, not coyotes, not owls, not even desperate foxes, will harm a white-tipped raccoon. Some truths don't fade. They root. They grow. They become part of the landscape itself. Every ending is a beginning in disguise. The hollow log waits. The wildflowers bloom on schedule. And somewhere out there right now, a stray cat is eyeing something impossible. Maybe baby squirrels, maybe ducklings, maybe even a lone wolf pup. The details don't matter. What matters is that moment of decision, that heartbeat when instinct wars with love. So press play on this story again. Share it, retell it, because the world needs reminders that families come in unexpected packages, that love laughs at biology, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the unlikeliest mother makes all the difference. Nayla's story ended, but yours? Yours is just getting started.